Tom Fitton. He's the president of Judicial Watch and the author of A Republic Under Assault. Tom, great to have you back with us.
Hey, Vince, good to be with you.
Tell us about what Judicial Watch is doing this week when it comes to Thomas Jefferson.
Well, we're a civil rights organization. It's the conservative groups that take this race-neutral approach to these issues that, frankly, are the traditional civil rights organizations these days. And the left is against civil rights. In the case of Fairfax County and the prior leadership of the Commonwealth of Virginia, you had this racialism that went into overdrive after the killing of George Floyd. And as you highlighted, you had this racially neutral approach to admissions at Thomas Jefferson High School, which is, by all accounts, was the number one high school in the country, practically speaking. And the leftists, after George Floyd, decided they looked at the numbers there. Of course, Thomas Jefferson, as we highlighted, what we did was we filed a brief in support of those who were complaining about the change, who were victimized by the change.
Yeah.
They looked at the diversity, and it was diverse. If it was the wrong type of diversity, there were too many Asian Americans. So they gamed the system, changed the rules for admission, and lo and behold, the number of Asian students admitted dropped precipitously. And a lower court looked at this and said, you can't do this. You can't just engage in racial targeting, practically speaking, in terms of gaming a system to ensure specific results in terms of racial diversity and makeup. That's discriminatory. And so obviously the other side appealed it, so it's on appeal before the Fourth Circuit. We don't know how it's going to go, but we're standing on the side of the rule of law here. And as you're pointing out, Vince, I mean, this isn't just here. It's all over the country. We had to sue Asheville, North Carolina. The city there had a race-based scholarship. You could only apply or benefit from it if you were black. Outrageously unconstitutional and discriminatory. And they said, okay, well, we won't do it anymore after we sued in federal court over it. It's incredible that we're fighting these issues, 50, 60 years after the federal civil rights laws and the state laws. And, of course, the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, is that core law that provides equal protection of the law, no matter your race or other characteristics.
Now, if I was in the Fairfax County school system and I noticed that, hey, Thomas Jefferson has, I think it's somewhere in the vicinity of 80% Asian students, 72%, 71.97%. That was in 2020 to 2021, 71.97% Asian students. And if I noticed that and I thought to myself, boy, we have so many black students as a percentage of the student population in Fairfax County. I really wish there were more black students in the Thomas Jefferson School of Science and Technology. How might we address that? The answer is not to cover up for your own failures and meddle with the admissions process to select people on the basis of race. It's to improve the lower schools that feed into Thomas Jefferson, isn't it? I mean, this seems to me a giant scheme designed to paper over the failures of the Fairfax County school system.
Yes, and the complicated problems behind minority achievement in our school system is a challenge, obviously. But as you're highlighting, the challenge isn't just to ignore the challenge and say, well, we're just going to ignore merit and pretend it doesn't matter.
Yes,
and essentially, turn Thomas Jefferson into a different high school where people get positions essentially because of their race as opposed to how well they did in school. And, of course, that does no favors for anyone. It does no favors for the minorities at the school. Obviously, it victimizes Asian American students who are, in a dramatic way, disproportionately impacted in a way that is not legal. I mean, just because the numbers are low, it doesn't mean there's something wrong. But when you're targeting someone, in this case, you had Fairfax County officials saying, oh, these numbers are unacceptable. We have got to change.
You with us still, Tom?
Reaching out to minority communities, helping them with testing, ensuring they knew about the availability of the testing process and how to prep for it. No. Change the rules, guarantee results. Equity, not equality.
Yes.
Marxism, not freedom.
And again, designed to cover up for the failures of the Fairfax County school system. The irony here is that, again, this is the #1 school in the country, and they were handed this great prize, and they decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to ruin it. We're going to ruin it by doing something that's flatly unconstitutional and illegal. I mean, how can the school district even, and I know they've been trying now for years, justify this type of behavior? If you go in and your sole explanation for meddling with the admissions process is that you want to change the color of the students who attend the school, that's flatly illegal. That is flatly unconstitutional. And yet this is a debate that's dragging its way through the court system.
It is, and it's at the Fourth Circuit now, which is the circuit that handles Virginia and Maryland. But on the other hand, it's been blessed in some ways, I don't think in this case, by the Supreme Court that has suggested that you can take race into account to achieve certain diversity results, and that diversity was a value that allowed you to discriminate on the basis of race. Now, the Supreme Court is going to look again at that precedent in the upcoming term, where they consider again discriminatory practices that again target Asian Americans in places like Harvard and North Carolina, and that's a big case coming up. And, to quote Chief Justice Roberts, the way to end discrimination based on race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. It doesn't get any simpler than that.
No, and yet the left persists and keeps doing this very thing. Do you sense that there's a sea change on this conversation? I feel like for years this has kind of been happening out of public view, the left's efforts to meddle with racial compositions and to use racial prejudice as a standard for how people gain entry to all sorts of institutions. Do you think the public is waking up to this?
I think the left is kind of, like they've done so many things, kind of gone overboard. They've kind of trying to blow up our anti-discrimination laws. And the public's inconsequential if the courts allow. So these bureaucracies are kind of a power unto themselves at the collegiate level, and sometimes these school and states, these state school systems. But the Supreme Court may just say you can't do this, and this whole diversity pretext for racial discrimination may end. But the danger is, I guess I would highlight, is that they don't even believe in diversity anymore. They just believe in quotas for the sake of quotas, and they want to not only support some races but punish others. So it's a dangerous time for racial, in terms of racial division in this country, because you have one side of the aisle committed to making it worse.
Oh, unquestionably. I think one of the things that sticks out in this debate and why the left finds itself on its heels is they think for years they were able to sort of easily basically just attack people for being white. What they didn't count on, I guess, was that those attacks would eventually spill over to other people, and that includes Asian, South Asian people. And you have a lot of parents who are standing up to this and saying, like, really? Like, I thought you were for diversity, kind of to your point, Tom, and yet you're attacking me?
And look, you talk about the Wuhan virus, they accuse you of being anti-Asian, but if you seek to prohibit Asians from attending a school in the numbers that are appropriate to their success, what does that mean you are? I mean, this is leftism today, and this is and to your point, you may think you're a beneficiary of this racial bean counting, but in the end, someone always gets punished, and they usually are happy to punish the races they're supposedly trying to protect and promote. It's all about blowing up the system and dividing the country in a way that allows them to obtain and retain and expand power by the state over the populace.
Totally, and using race is about insidious of a standard as you could possibly pick, because one way to have done this, like if they wanted to achieve some of these goals, they could have just established like economic thresholds. They could do based on household income and say, poorer people, more disadvantaged people, let's grade on a curve here. Maybe they didn't have access to the same resources to be as well educated, et cetera, et cetera. They don't even bother with that. They choose race, the most divisive possible thing to do, because they want the outcome to be what you just said. They just want destruction in the interest of pursuing their own power, and it's a cruel thing to do to families across Northern Virginia and certainly across the country.
There's systematic racism, all right, and it's usually in these diversity and inappropriately named affirmative action programs.
Unquestionably. Well, Tom Fitton, thanks as always for fighting the good fight. You guys are always on the right side of so many things. Judicial Watch, you're teaming up with the Allied Educational Foundation as well, and you filed an amicus brief this week in support of normal people. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's important we do this. The Wall Street Journal had an analysis of who was filing amicus briefs in this fight before the Supreme Court on racial discrimination.
Yeah.
Not one corporation opposed the racial discrimination. They all came in support of Harvard, in this case, discriminating on the basis of race. So the whole system's against us here, Vince, and we got to stand against it.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy. You spend years defending these corporations and their right to do business, and of course they're stabbing everybody in the back. It's amazing. It's just,
yeah.
We're in a really weird moment, and I hope we can come out of it better. And the only way that's going to happen is with people like you fighting for it. So thank you, Tom. Great to talk to you, sir.